Okay, a very good evening to all of you. In just another 2 to 3 minutes, I'm going to start the session. Just waiting for everybody to quickly join. Okay, till then, guys, you can let me know if I'm clearly audible and no, the video is clearly visible to you. You can ping in the chat saying yes or no, so that it's clear that I'm audible clearly. Okay, so hi, Shubham, you replied that I'm audible. Thank you. Navnath Pujari, yes, okay, thank you. Thank you, Rohit, for mentioning that I'm audible. Okay, guys, so I'm sorry. We have waited for 2 minutes now. So let people join eventually, and I'll get started with the session. So, guys, okay, Chandir Rai, ma'am, I'm totally a beginner in programming language. Fine, guys. So let me get started with the session and give you a gist of what all I'm going to, talk about and who will be benefited from the session today. So, good evening once again to all of you. This is Pragya here, and I'll be talking about access modifiers in Java today. So, guys, this session is going to be useful or helpful for those who are beginners in programming language. Okay, you have started learning Java programming, and you want some of your doubts to be cleared on the topic of access modifiers in Java. Then this session is going to be really, really useful to you. Okay, I'll be also talking about few tips and tricks with each access modifier, which I am going to discuss here. So starting from public, private, protected kind of a simple access modifiers to the complex ones like synchronized native and Strictfp, all kind of access modifiers that are possible in Java is what I'm going to discuss in this session today. Okay, and as I said, if you are a beginner in programming or you are an expert, there is something today in the session for everyone. Okay, but if you are most probably a beginner, then definitely the session is going to clear your most of the doubts, or I can say almost every doubt that is related to access modifiers in Java. Guys, mostly I'll take the questions in the end for longer duration, but in between also, if you like to put up your questions, you can definitely put it up. I'll be checking the chat box then and now and keep on answering your questions even in between. Okay. Okay, Devyanshu Rathod, hello, hello. Very good to see few, students who are consistently listening to the lectures since the very first day. So, guys, these sessions are, more focused towards the beginners, people like who want to learn Java programming. That's the reason I have started from very basics of this Java programming language, and I'm going forward. Okay, so going forward, almost every single topic of Java will be covered. So today the topic is access modifiers in Java. So as you can see on the screen, it's mentioned that from public, private, protected, default, final, static, abstract, strict FP, native, synchronized, transient, volatile. So all kind of access modifiers I'm going to discuss today in the session. Okay, few tips and tricks with respect to all these, and not just theoretically I'll be talking, but also on the IDE I will show you whatever I'm saying, is it true or not. We are going to check here in the live session itself by writing a code on the IDE. Okay, so it's not just the theoretical explanations here, but also its practical implementation or counterpart will be discussed. Okay, so guys, stay tuned and let's get started. Okay, so guys, first of all, before getting us ahead, what is access modifiers? I'll tell you why we need access modifiers. Okay, right? Why is actually the this concept overall total there in any programming language for that matter? So let's talk about Java. Why in Java people thought that okay, this access modifier is required? Guys, because see, any code which you run has to be executed at the backend by some other application, and that is also a software. That's not some human being who runs your code each and every line, right? It's some software itself. Like we say for Java programming, JVM is responsible for the execution. And JVM is what? Java Virtual Machine. Although the name is machine, but it is a software at the backend, right? Which provides a complete environment for a Java code to run. Now that machine or that software code, whatever you refer, so JVM, how will JVM understand that the code which you have written should be executed in some manner, right? Some information has to be given with respect to the code which you have written. Now that code can be a class, that code can be a method, it can be an interface, it can be a variable. These are the things we write as a part of a Java code, right? Now to for all these codes, you have to tell the compiler, you have to tell JVM that okay, this class which I have created is having this features. Some information you have to tell about the class. Some information you have to tell about the method to the JVM. And that's the reason, this access modifiers was thought of and it came into picture. Okay. So what kind of information is required to be sent to JVM? No, JVM should, like, first thing, what for, suppose for a class, if I take an example. Okay. So for a class, what all things are there? A class consists of certain methods, certain variables, right? And we can make object of a class. These are the properties if I talk in general of a class, right? Now, those methods, can it be defined or not? Can it be accessed by the object or not? Where all it can be accessed? Can I even create an object of the class or not? So these information should be given to the JVM. JVM will not self understand that okay, this should be there, right? We as a programmer only should send these informations. Now, what informations exactly? So these three, the basic informations are required to be sent to the JVM. And that information is accessibility of the class. Meaning, if I have defined a class or even for a method, like I have taken here example of a class, you can consider the same thing for the method and variables also. So for class, where all the class is accessible from? Is the class accessible from child class? Is the class accessible from some other package, some other folder? For from in one project I have defined a class. Is that class accessible in some other project later on if I want to access that class, can I? If I have defined certain method in some other programming language, like suppose I have defined a method in C language or C++, I want to use that method in Java. Can I do that or not? All these kind of information has to be given to JVM, correct? So that is your accessibility. Then instantiation of the class, meaning can we create an object of the class or not? If we can create object, then JVM will consider that class in a different way. If we can't create object, then JVM will consider that class in a different way. Yes. So these all kind of information has to be given. Second, child class creation is possible or not. Meaning, can we inherit that class? Meaning, can we have a child class? Like here I'm talking about inheritance concept of object-oriented programming. If can we create a child class of a given class or not? So this all information has to be given, and to provide all these sort of informations, whatever I discussed right now, there are only these few access modifiers which we can use in Java programming. Okay. So with the help of just these few named access modifiers, we will be able to send all kind of possible informations to JVM about a class, method, and variables. Okay, so in this session, I'll be just confined to these three things, that is class, methods, and variables. How can we use these access modifiers among them? Okay, I hope this is clear to you. Okay, I'll take up any question if it is at all there. Specify the scope of a field is what Divyanshu is asking. So, okay, so you're telling that, yeah, access modifiers is used for that. So, yeah, correct. In a way, yeah, but scope is defined by local variable and global variable that way. And yes, some access modifiers can be used for defining the scope as well. Like for example, if I say static or instance variable. So yeah, definitely some modifiers specify that as well. But most importantly, these three informations. Okay, accessibility of a class. Can we create object of the class or not? Or is the child class creation possible or not? For classes. Similarly, for methods, different things are there. Okay, accessibility of a method. Can we call the method directly with the name, or do we need object to call the method? Can we override a method in the child class or not? So all these things. Okay, let's get started. Talking about the very first access modifiers. But again, before talking about this, let me tell you, people generally get confused between access specifiers and access modifiers. Access specifiers and access modifiers. Now, these are two words, right? Can they be used interchangeably? That is it the same thing, access specifier, access modifier? So guys, actually, in most of the other programming languages, access specifiers are referred to the three, access specifier, that is your public, private and protected and private. And all others are called as access modifiers. But in Java programming, if I refer, there is no such terms as access specifier. All are called as access modifiers only. Okay? Because they tell how we can modify basically a given class, method, or whatever variable. Fine. So in Java, don't remember there is only access modifier. So all these three, public, protected, private, is also called as access modifiers itself. Now, coming to the first access modifiers of the session, that is our public. This is most widely used, yes or no? So public access modifier, when you use it before a class, you can use it before a method, you can use it before a variable. Okay, so you can have public class, public method, and public variable. Meaning of this is that defined class can be accessible from anywhere. For example, if I write public class meaning this class is accessible from the same package, the same folder, and it is also accessible from other package. Okay, so that's your public class. Now public method. So public method meaning that method can be accessed from the class in which it is defined. It can be also accessed from outside the class, maybe the child class or inner class or anywhere else. That is other class of the same package. The method can be accessed from some other package, some other class. Meaning everywhere. There's no scope or place left where a public method cannot be referred, cannot be accessed. Clear? Then comes is your public variables. So public variables, again same thing. You can access the variables within that method, outside, outside that class, in the same package, outside the package in some other class, outside the package in some other method. Now how to access and all that is a different question altogether, but yeah, you can access it. Okay. Now there is one very important tip and trick here which I'm going to tell you now. So for that I will go to the IDE. So let's go to the IDE. So you can see here there is a class defined as example. Okay, and I have defined it to be public. There's only one class here, okay, one file, which is having public static void main method. Now, why have I defined this class as public? And what will happen if I remove this public from here? Will it throw any error? Let me execute and see. So I have removed public from here, okay? Class example is what I have written. Now let me run this file. So if I run this file, so it will take some time to show the result. Just a second. So this is the tip which I'm going to give you for public access modifier. So you can see here, there is, even if I have not used public here, it's working fine. Because the file name you see here is example.java. Okay, and there is no other class. Now you will understand soon what exactly I'm trying to say. If I define one more class, uh, maybe A, let it be the name of the class A as well. Okay. Now, if I run this, then also there is no error, no problem. If I remove this from here, and Okay, 1 second. Okay, I'll make this class as public. Now you see here, there is an error showing here. Why? So till now, when I have not written public here, no issues, no problem, it was working fine. When I wrote public over here, it says a error, and that error is class A is public, should be declared in a file named a.java. So the tip of the session for public modifier is that whenever you define a class in Java, the name of the file, that class should be same as the class name. Now, which class name? The class which is declared as public. Okay. So the class which is having the main method should always be declared as public. Why? Because that class has to be accessed from outside this complete environment, outside this complete project. Like you can see your live project is the project name which I have created. Now this public class A, or the class which is having main method, has to be accessed by JVM. And JVM is not part of this project which I have created. It is somewhere outside. Correct? So to access anything outside the package, public access modifier is required. And if I don't apply any, don't write any access modifier here, then by default it makes this as public and solves its purpose. But if I deliberately make this as public, then there is a problem. Then the compiler or JVM gets confused that which class is exactly a public class, which one should I refer? This class is defined as public, but this is not having main method. And this class example is having main method, but it is not defined public. You're getting my point? So you have to define this class to be public and this class to be non-public. I mean, some other access specifier. You can use private, no problem. Okay. Uh, okay, it's outside this, so that's why it's the same package. So yeah, you can use any other access specifier, but the file name the class name should be public. Understood? Okay, so this was about the public access specifier modifier. Now I'll come back. Similarly, you can have a public method, you can have a public variables. But again, to make sure that, let me show you, or let me just tell you here, that if you define, like suppose you have defined a private class, okay, private class A, and inside that you want to define a public method, public void m1, then in that case there will be a problem. It will throw a compile time error because before defining a public method you have to check its class also is should be public, because private is a more restricted access modifier and you are defining the method inside it to be accessed from anywhere, but you are not making this class accessible from outside anywhere else. So it is a contradictory thing. But before that, private access modifier is not used for outer class. Only public is the access specifier which is used for outer class. That's the reason just now when I wrote private, it was showing error, because private and protected, these two access modifiers are not for outer class. Let's go to that now and try to understand. So public, I hope you understood. Any doubt, anything you want me to repeat public access modifier? Okay, so Bunty Srivastava has written that default public always if we not mention. So guys, let me tell you, if you don't mention, the access modifier for the class, only the class which is having main method will have by default public, rest all will be by default default. Okay, so now what is default access modifier? I'll tell you that also. Just let's one by one discuss all. Okay, so what is private access modifier now? So private access modifier is accessible, meaning if you use private class or a private method or a private variable, that it will not be accessible outside the class. As I said, private is not applicable to the outer class. Just keep this in mind. Okay. So only if you have like suppose you have a class here A, and then inside this you have another class B. Okay, we have concept of nested and inner class in Java. So this class A cannot be private. If I write private here, it will throw a error. But if I write inside, it doesn't. Let me just show you as well. So, okay, now this class I'm going to write inside. Okay, so if you can see here, if this class I make it as private, it's going to tell me a compile time error. That modifier private is not allowed here. Fine. So it has to be public. If I write here private, then there will be no problem because it's a inner class, okay, in the nested class. So this you have to keep in mind. Now if I define like this class private class A, now inside this if I define a public method, public void m1, okay. So okay, now what is the problem over here? I am saying that this class A is not accessible outside this class. Okay, but I'm saying public void m1 means m1 should be accessible everywhere, even outside this class. Isn't it a contradictory thing? So before using, like you'll not get any, what can compile time error here, but when you'll try to access it later on m1 from somewhere else, although you have declared it as public, you will not be able to do that. Getting it? So that kind of a problem will come. So always make sure, even though it's not showing any error, guys, but you have to check yourself that a highly restrictive modifier should not be on the top level and little lenient modifier should not be in the inner level. Meaning a method if cannot be declared public, if a class is declared as private, the method inside that class cannot be public. But there's no error into it. You have to use your own brain and understand here that, okay, private, if I make the class, even though I make the method public, what's the whole use? I will not be able to access method m1 here from outside this package or outside this class because the class itself is not accessible. Getting it? So that's the point. So that was all about your private access modifier. Now, private modifier is applicable to be used for variables. Okay, it's suggested, it's not a fixed rule, guys, but it is suggested to make all your variables in your project or software which you are developing in Java to be as private. Okay, and all the methods, it is advised to make it as public. Fine. Because private access modifier provides more, if you use it for variables, it provides more security to your code. So it is suggested, not a compulsory thing. Coming to the next protected access modifier. So for protected, what happens that it is accessible from same class and its child class. From same class, okay, this and will be over here, and its child class. Meaning if I have defined class A here, again protected is also not used for classes that is outer class. So generally we avoid using for classes protected data, sorry, access modifier, although it is applicable, but not for outer class. It's not applicable for outer class. Inner class, like as I demonstrated for private, you can use for protected also. Any doubts here? Any questions? You can put it up on the chat group. I'll just quickly answer it. So class A, this is the, I mean, class created. Now, if I defined here a protected method, okay, protected void m1. This class is public, okay. So public class A, protected void m1. Now in the inside this some no some code is written which I'm not writing it. Okay, let me go to the full screen. It will be easy to demonstrate here. So class A, and then inside this there is a method which is protected void m1. Some code is there. This is public class. Now suppose I am creating here a child class. Okay, public class B. Inside this, if I want to access this method M1, will I be able to access? Yes, but how? You have to extend this class. Extends class A. Okay. Then you can make use of this class by overriding it. So you can use overriding concept and you can override the method M1. You can provide its own implementation. Clear? Now, if suppose this is suppose package, I'm creating a package here, package P1. Now in some other package, okay, somewhere else I want this method M1 to access. How can I? Let's see. Suppose this is some other package. Name of the package is package P2. Okay. Here I have to first import this particular package. So I'll do import uh, P1 dot star. Okay. Package name dot star. Now inside this I have created a class C. Fine. To use this method M1 in class C, what should I do? I should extend this class or directly can I make use of it? If I directly make use of it, I have to create an object of class A here and then access it. Otherwise, how will I? Getting it? So what you have to do here is that you can make or you can access the protected method from inside the package as well as from outside the package. But to access it from outside the package, you have to use child class reference to access that method. Okay? Meaning you can't use the parent class reference. Meaning what? You have to extend this and or even if you don't extend this, you have to create the object of class C1, C, that is new C, and using this child class C dot M1, you have to refer it. Okay, so in protected, just keep this in mind. Although protected data members or protected methods is accessible within the package, even outside the package, but outside the package only in the child class of the given class and only by using child class reference, that is child class object. Okay, so this is about the protected access modifier. Be careful, private and protected is not used for outer classes. Any question till now? Any questions till now, guys? No? Okay, so I'll move ahead to the next access modifier, that is your package level access. That is your default access modifier. So default access modifier, why it provides package level access, meaning if your access modifier is defined to be default, it means the given class, the given method and the given variable is accessible only within the package. Any other class but of the same package, okay, child class but of the same package. Fine, so this is your default access modifier. Let us see now that how we use this. So I'll just delete this part. If I have to define this as default, can I? Okay, this I can't make it as default. But if I have to define default void M1. Okay, so it says that you cannot have default access modifier here for the method. Again, I said you have to be very careful with the restrictive hierarchy. The class is if public, then the inner methods making it more restrictive is by default we should avoid doing that back actually. But if I'm writing private here, there is no error. But if I write default, then there is an error here. Says that extension methods can only be used within an interface. So you don't have to make this method as default. So again guys, the tip here is that default access modifier is generally used when for classes basically. Okay. And when you have to make sure that a certain thing has to be accessed throughout the given package. And also keeping in mind the, you can say the restrictive hierarchy. Okay, but with private this is not there. You have to self understand that should I use private here, is it making any sense or not. But for default, this hierarchy is predefined, meaning it will throw a compile time error as we saw right now. So that's all about your default access modifier. So I hope it is clear that if you make a class default, a method default, or a variable default, you can access those things, classes, methods, and variables only within the given package, current package. Okay. Yeah, default is a keyword. Okay, so confused to call protected from child class. It is Akash Chauhan. Okay, I will execute it on the IDE and show you maybe at the end of the session. Let me just complete all the things because typing may take some time and I will not be able to cover all. So let me first explain all the access modifiers and we will do an example where I have to create two different package, right, for explaining that. So we'll do it at the end of the session. Now, next is your final access modifier, which is very important and quite confusing as well, guys. So make sure you pay more attention on this access modifier. So final is applicable to classes, methods, and variables, all three. Fine. If you define a class to be final, so as you can see, the name itself says final, meaning nothing beyond this. This is final. Okay. So final class, if you define, it means you cannot create or you cannot extend that class. Okay, that's the final class, meaning no more extension is possible, meaning inheritance concept you cannot apply on the final class. You cannot extend. So extends is not possible. Fine. If you define method to be final, it means you cannot override that method. Overriding is not possible for that method which is defined to be final. If you define a variable to be final, it means the value which you are initializing to final variable cannot be reassigned or reinitialized anywhere in the code later. That's the final value which you will assign to the variable. Let's check that quickly. So if I define this to be final and later on, or I'll let this be as it is, guys. Okay, and I'm going to define a class here, final plus a. Okay, now in this class, if I want to extend this class, extends, and if I write a, then you can see it shows a error here which says cannot inherit from final A. That's the meaning if a class is declared as final, you cannot extend it. You cannot create a child class of it. Inheritance concept cannot be is not applicable over here. Fine. So you cannot have a child class of the final class. So that you understood. Now, suppose, okay, I will remove this class to be final. Now, in this, I'm going to define a method which is final. So final void M2. Okay. And I want to override this. Like class A is not final anymore, so I can extend it. So no error over here. But later on, if I want to override this, void M2, if I write this, then you see here it says that M2 cannot override M2 in A because overridden method is final. This is the error being displayed, right? That's what I said right now. You cannot override a final method. I hope this is clear. If guys, suppose there is a tip again in this also for you people, and that tip is that first you answer me this, okay? Then I will tell you what the tip is. If I make this class as final, will I be able, and I'm not making this method as final, will I be able to override this method M2 now? Yes? Guys, if a class is declared as final, then definitely its methods are by default final. You cannot override, sorry, you cannot extend the class itself, then how is it possible to override the methods? Correct? So that's by default understood. Now suppose inside, here I'm going to define a variable int x, okay? But this I'm going to define as final. So first thing it shows an error that you have to initialize. You cannot have a final variable without initialization. Okay, so you should initialize that to some value. Later on, you cannot change the value of this x as it is defined as final. Suppose here I want to change this value of x and I want to reassign is at 5. It will throw a error. Okay, so that's how final works. Coming back to the slide. So this is about final class, final method and final variable. I hope that is clear to you. Going to the next modifier, that is your abstract. Now, many times this confusion is there between an abstract class, abstract methods, and interface. Okay, so if you will understand this abstract here, maybe you can easily differentiate between abstract class and an interface. Okay, so abstract access modifier is applicable to classes as well as methods. It is not for variables. Okay, so you cannot have abstract int x. No, you can have only abstract class and abstract method. Okay, now if I define a class to be abstract, meaning what? Meaning you cannot create the object of that class. Okay, I'll go to the IDE again for you. So, okay, if I create this abstract class A, okay, if I create a class to be abstract class A, you can override this class, no problem in that. But what you cannot do is that you cannot create the object of this class. Uh, okay, I'll create the object of this over here in the main method. So A is the name, right? So A, okay. A1 equals to new A. It is going to throw a error. A is abstract, cannot be instantiated, meaning you cannot create an object. Now you must be thinking interface also we can't create objects, correct? So what's the difference then? Same thing. Let me tell you what's the difference. Abstract class, if you have written, I said you cannot create the object of it. If I write abstract here, one method is abstract over here. Another method I'm going to have here is void m3, which is not an abstract method. So yeah, inside an abstract class, you can have abstract method as well as non-abstract methods both. Okay, first thing to keep in mind. Next, if you have any one method as abstract, then definitely you should make that class also as abstract. Because if I'll not make, you can see here it shows an error, compile time error. And that error is that class A must either be declared abstract or implement abstract method M2 in A. It means it says that class A should be abstract. So if even if any one method inside the class is abstract, then definitely you should have the class also as abstract. Why guys, do you understand why it says that? Because when I make a method as abstract, it means what? That method is not having its implementation over here. You can see it is ending with a semicolon. It means what? That this method should be overridden into some other class to provide its implementation. Should be inherited to some other class to provide its implementation. Because implementation is required for any method, yes or no? So if you can't provide here, then somewhere else it should be provided. And that somewhere else is only possible if this is overridden, if it is extended to some other class. Yes or no? And that is only possible if I make this class as abstract. Because directly I can't call the methods of this class now. So definitely or for sure I have to extend this class, abstract class A, to some other class. Then only I can, right? So that's the reason that if there is even only one method inside a class as abstract, then the whole class has to be made as abstract for sure. Okay, understood? So this was about the abstract class and abstract method. So abstract method, we don't have implementations of it. You can have n number of abstract and non-abstract methods inside an abstract class. But if only one method is abstract, then definitely that class should be declared as abstract. Now, can you tell me, can I use abstract and final together? If not, why? Guys, quickly you can answer it in the chat box. We cannot have abstract and final together. Why? Okay, I'm waiting for your replies, guys. Okay, till then I'll answer the questions. Manikandan has asked, can private method override, ma'am? No, private method cannot be overridden. It cannot be accessed only from outside that given class. So definitely. Okay, so Arka has answered that no. Correct. Reason? Because we cannot have instance then. True. No, instance then. Okay, abstract also, if I make a class as abstract, then also we can't have an object of it. If I make final also, okay, instance, this is not a correct answer, I guess. So, fine, let me answer it. Okay. So, abstract says that we have to override the class A for sure because there is one abstract method inside it which has to be overridden and its implementation should be provided. But if you make it final, it means you cannot override this class. So how can two contradictory things you can put together? Abstract says for sure you have to extend the class, but final says you cannot extend the class. So both are contradictory, right? So either you can have abstract or you can have final. Both together is not possible. So it is about extending the class, not about child class or instance or anything else. And not about, sorry, the object or instance or anything else. Yep, correct. Most of you have given the correct answer. I'll go ahead quickly because a lot of the things is there to discuss with you all, and I'm short of time, so I'll not just waste time here. Fine, but I'll just definitely tell you this because this is going to help you a lot in the interviews. That there's some illegal modifier combination with abstract for methods. So just quickly, I'll tell you here that if you use abstract, you should not use few modifiers. For example, final, which I showed you also right now. If you are using abstract, then you should not use synchronized. Now, what is synchronized? I will tell you in some amount of time. If you cannot use static as well, okay, you cannot use strict FP because in this some methods will be abstract, so you cannot use a strict FP there. Final, synchronized, static, strict FP, uh, yeah. So these are the access modifiers which you will not be able to use along with abstract, and for sure private, among private, public and protected. Okay, if you're making it private, how will you extend it? And abstract says you have to extend it. So definitely private also cannot be used. Coming to a static no access modifier. So static is applicable for only methods and variables. It's not for classes. There is something called as static blocks also, guys. But as of now, I'm talking about class, method, and variables. So I'll stick to this. This altogether is a different topic. So static methods and static variables, or you can have static blocks. So if you have static method, it means you no need of having a reference or an object of that class to call that particular method. You can directly refer to that method. If it is variable, I'll go to the IDE only. It will make you understand more better. So this is class A. Okay, I'll just delete all these extra things. Now in this, if I make this method to be static, okay, and I want to access it from the main method, then I can access it example dot m2 directly. No need of creating an object here. If I am not having static, this as static, then I have to create, I cannot call like this. Okay, you have to create an object of it. Example a1 equals to a new example, right? Then I can call this method using this a1, a1.m2. But if I make this as static, then I can directly call it using the class name sorry, example.m2. Okay, this is not required, although you can, but this is not required. So that's what static method is meant by. Okay, if I make a variable as static, now what is the meaning of that? So to understand that, understand this way. Now there is instance variable and there is static variable. Two concepts are there, guys. So if I make a variable as static, so if I write static int x as 5, and here I write int x as 5. Difference is what will happen in the memory backend may x will equal to 5, one memory space will be allocated. Okay. Next, suppose some method is there m1. This method, this is a method. Now this method wants to access to this x. What will happen? It will access to the same memory location which is defined as x as 5. Okay. So it will access to the same place. But here in case of instance variable, if there is a method m1 and it tries to access this x, what will happen? There will be a separate memory allocation done again for x equals to 5. Okay, this same thing will be stored once again, which is local to this method m1. So next method, if I define void m2, this method will also refer to its own copy of x. Getting it? But here if I define another variable void m2, this is going to refer to the again same place. Meaning static variables are declared only once, can be used throughout the code with the same reference, same memory reference. But in instance variable, each like again and again the copy of it is created for each particular method locally. So I hope you understood the difference of static variable and instance variable. Why static can't use in class is a question by Manikandan. Why you can't use static in the class? Okay, so yeah, static is not meant for in Java programming. That's how it is designed, guys. So there's no such answer to it. Static method and static variable you can use. If you want to use or put complete code inside a static thing, then in place of making a class static, you can have a static block. And okay, I can answer you this question as well, if at all you are able to understand this. Maybe a little high level for few people, but okay. So when I make a static block, before the rest of the program starts its execution, static things executes, meaning static block, static method, static variable executes even before the main method starts its execution. Okay, so there's a whole altogether different logic behind the static. So if you make a static class, that has to execute before even the main method gets executed. And that's not possible because main method has to be executed first, because that's the first thing which is called by what called the JVM. That's how the program is structured to run, right? But static block, first of all, what happens that when the scanning is done for the code, all the static things are loaded first in the memory. Like how, if you understand the memory structure in JVM, then you will see that there is a separate place for static blocks, static methods, and variables. And first, these are loaded to that block, that area, memory area for Java programming, and that gets executed first, and then any other thing. Any other thing meaning even the main method. So that's the whole concept why static is not there for class. Okay, coming to the next modifier, that is your strict FP. So strict FP is not very widely used, but yeah, guys, you should use it because strict FP makes your code more portable, or you can say more uniform. How? Strict FP is applicable to classes and method on the first place, and what happens is when you perform certain floating point calculations, if you perform large floating point calculations in your code, if you're developing such kind of a project, and so the result of this floating point calculation is different on different machines. On my laptop, maybe sometimes it can differ, larger values. Some calculation result can differ, but your laptop maybe some other value you will get some change in the points, maybe after decimal values. If you want uniform result, uniform output on all the machines, for heavy floating point calculations, then you should declare that class to be strict FP and that method to be also strict FP. If you declare the method to be strict FP, then that method will by default use IEEE 754 floating point standard, and using that standard, either the method is executed on this machine or some other machine, the result of that floating point calculation will always be same. Okay, so that's about your strict FP access modifier. Fine. This is a keyword itself. Like any other modifier, you can make that as well. Coming to native. Now, native is a access modifier which is used in a very strange situation, by the way. Let me tell you that situation. Suppose in C language or in C++ language, you have defined certain method. You have defined method M1. And here also suppose some method M2 you have defined. You want to make use of this M1 in your Java code in the current project. So in that case, you have to use native void M1, getting it? It will say that this particular method M1 is not the native method of Java. It has been taken from some other language. Okay, so that's the meaning of native access modifier. It's also called as foreign access modifier. It is applicable only for methods. It's not for classes, not for variables. So you can only have methods from other programming languages into this. But guys, this is not advisable, or this is not a good access modifier. Why? Because see, Java is a portable language, right? It's platform independent. But other programming language from where you are bringing it, it might not be portable. Might not be platform independent. So the features of Java will be somewhere compromised, right, in your project if you're using this. So yeah, it's not advisable to be used, but still, if you feel that the other language also portable is also compatible, I mean, platform independent or something, you're free to use. And for that, there is this facility from Java, that is, you can make that method as native and you can use it. So with that, JVM will understand that this method is not of this particular language; it's from some other language. Clear? Next one is your synchronized. So synchronized, as the name itself says, like carrying out the whole computation and calculation in a synchronized manner. Whenever there are more than, like suppose this is a data, okay, data x as 5. Now this data x is being accessed by various methods, m1, m2, and m3, three methods. This is also making some change to x, it is doing x plus 1. This is making some change, it is doing x minus 3. This is doing some change to x plus plus. And all these are doing these changes and writing it to the same memory location. In that case, there can be a consistency problem, right? So to solve this data inconsistency, we make this method to be synchronized. This method also synchronized. This method also synchronized. So whenever you add this word synchronized before method, JVM will take care that okay, all these methods together should not access any variable. One by one, it's in a synchronized way or manner, the whole execution should happen. So that's what synchronized is all about. Okay, it's for methods and blocks only. It's not for variables or classes. Coming to transient. So transient is applicable only to the variables. And this is also used in serialization. The example which I gave you right now for synchronized, same example is there here also. Here also, if there no data inconsistency problem can be there. But if you used transient for the variable this time, transient index, it means this variable will be accessed in a serial way by any given method. There won't be a problem of uh, inconsistency or some wrong accessing of the values or something like that. So this makes the whole task in a serial execution. So in this same example, guys, same situation, but here I'm going to make, in place of making methods as synchronized, I'm going to make variable only as a transient. Okay. So this is your access modifier. Next is your volatile access modifier. Okay. Okay, sorry, a mistake by me. Volatile is the thing which I just now explained you. So not transient. So volatile is applicable for variables. Okay, it solves data inconsistency problem in the same way like how I said for this one synchronized. Here I made the methods as synchronized, but if you have to make variable in such a way that it is accessed one by one, not together, and and if you access together, wrong values can be fetched, then you have to make this variable itself as volatile. Okay. Transient transient is used for variables again, but it is used only in serialization of the complete code. If you want to serialize the complete code in that way, in that situation, we make variables as transient. So guys, we discussed all the access modifiers that are applicable for classes, interface, variables, methods in Java programming. Now, although I didn't execute it all these and showed because of time shortage, but you can execute it on your own end, and maybe in the next live session also you can put up a question or any query if you have related to this. As of now, I'll open the floor to for questions. So you can put up your questions, and those who have already put up, I can go on and answer those questions. Okay, so Devanshu has asked that for static variables value, where is it stored? Location, ma'am. Location name. Okay, so guys, what happens that the memory area of JVM when we execute Java code is divided into various sectors. Stack area, heap area. Okay, these are the general ones which you know. So some variables are stored in a stack, the local ones, the local variables to a method, which is like, when a method call is done, that variable is created, then that is stored in stack. The heap memory uh, has, again, in JVM, heap memory is also further categorized, but okay, I'll not go into that detail. But as you have asked a question, so the static variables and all are stored in under heap memory only. Okay, but yeah, there is again a partition to this. Few parts of it is executed first, few parts is executed later. Some other details are also there. So that can be, talked about when we completely study the structure of JVM, how it is. Okay. Um, Difference between private and protected data member. So private data, okay, so someone has answered as well. Manikandan has answered it as well for the question by technical support. Okay, your name is quite interesting. Private access own class and protected access accessible within the package. Yeah, private, if you define a method, meaning that method is accessible only within that class, not outside the class itself. Also, even in child class or anywhere, not possible. But for protected, you can access that method outside the class but only in the child class, okay, within the same package anywhere other class, whether it is child class or not, no issues. But other package, if you want to access a protected method, then that other package you can only access by child class reference or only in the child class. But within the package, protected methods can be accessed anywhere. Fine. So that was the difference. Can abstract class have static variables in it? No. So answer to your question is no. Abstract class A. The question was, can abstract class static variables into it? Static int x equals to 5. So, okay. Inside abstract class, we had a static variable x 5. There is no error to it. Okay. But point is that if you want to refer it here, suppose I like when you define a variable, definitely it has to be accessed somewhere else, right? So if I access it from here, and if I try to access it, suppose x uh, equals to 5, or maybe not like this, system dot out dot println x. 1 second. Okay, so okay, so this is extended. Now here if I try to access this variable x, then there will be a problem, right? It says unknown class x. So naturally or normally there is no problem with it. You can go ahead, compile time error won't be there. But if you try to use other concepts, like if you extend, like abstract class, you have to extend it, right? And if you extend it and try to use that variable later on, then there comes the problem. As we saw, there will be a compile time error. You're not able to do that. So although you are advisable, I mean you can use it, but you're not advisable to use it because that has other no problems later on. Okay, guys, so that's all about the session. So, as there is no more further questions, I will just wind up the session. And it was really nice talking to all of you. See you in the next live session. Thank you.